Jason White has a great opportunity here to show America he still deserves a shot to get a Heisman Trophy. He will put up big numbers against the Colorado defense, 100th in the nation in pass defense. Big day for Jason White.
You know, I went with Brock Berlin. He's going to have a monster game.
Kansas City tonight on ABC, and I have a special gift for you here because, as any Auburn man knows, Oklahoma has got to go down to Colorado to really help your chances. So there's a Colorado hat. You got the Colorado colors on already. It may not fit you. Try it on anyway, and just tell me what you think. Can Colorado shock the world and beat Oklahoma?
You know, they cannot. Oklahoma is a terrific team. I think it'll be a better game than people give them credit for, though. But I like Oklahoma.
You like a lot of close games.
Oklahoma in the fourth quarter wins a close one.
I think very similar. Oklahoma competes. Colorado plays. Oklahoma pulls away. Jason White, as I said, huge game.
All right.
You better get ready, 'cause you know we're about to go all night.
It's crowded at the top. Orange is on the horizon, and USC tried to squeeze by the Bruins for a date with the Sooners. The taste of sugar would be a bitter pill for the Tigers to swallow, with Tennessee volunteer to give Auburn a BCS boost. Meanwhile, two old foes find themselves in an unfamiliar position, battling for an ACC title. How sweet it is on College Game Day Final next.
Better get ready, 'cause you know we're about to go all night. We do what we do, and we do it 'cause we're doing it right.
Trojans on their way to the national championship game. Oklahoma with an opportunity to join them. They can take care of business in the Big 12 championship game against Colorado, so it seemed. And there's the freshman, Adrian Peterson.
This is why I think that Adrian Peterson's the most important player on his team, because of that run right there. Now you can play action pass. Now your passing game can go on. Jason White, all kinds of time. And there's Will Peebles, easy touchdown, 7-0 Sooners.
That was a 31st touchdown pass of the season for Jason White, and Jason White looking for Mark Clayton Ayers, number 32, 22 yards, 14-0. Sooners were just annihilating the Buffs, who were totally overmatched. Teams from the Big 12 North hadn't beaten anybody from the South except Baylor. And White, this is a terrific catch made by Mark Clayton right on the fingertips.
Wonderful job of concentration of grabbing the ball right there, looking it in, and getting his feet in the end zone for the score.
You know, until deep in the second half, Colorado didn't get past its own 38-yard line. And look who's back, Antonio Perkins. Out with an injury, really solidifies that Sooner secondary. He comes up with an interception of Joel Klatt, and here's the freshman, Peterson. Peterson would hit 100 yards for the 11th time in the season, first freshman to do that. 28 coming right at you.
This is why Adrian Peterson's special. In the fourth quarter, wearing people down. 6 tackles he missed there. 33 yards for the touchdown, breaking 6 tackles. An unbelievable power run by Adrian Peterson.
And a much better performance for Stoops Sooners in this Big 12 championship game than we saw last year, when not as much was on the line against Kansas State and they got drilled. 42-3. Look at the discrepancy in total yards. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this in a supposed championship game. 501 to 46. They have 46 yards of offense.
The Big 12 North should be embarrassed.
I would say so. They were embarrassed by it. That is somewhat resigned to his fate, that they are going to be the team that is left out of the national championship game. As you look at these three teams, and we've said it for quite some time, there's not a dime's worth of difference among these three. They've all had spectacular seasons, but the misfortune of all being undefeated at the end of this campaign, we can only take 2. Who are the 2 that they should take to the FedEx Orange Bowl?
Well, like you said, Reese, I mean, if you say 2 people, then the third one's going to think you think it's against them, and that's not what it's all about. But I still have Auburn number 2. I mean, I don't know how you hold it against them. I have USC number 1. I've had Auburn number 2. And so you're going to drop Auburn. I'm supposed to drop Auburn because they only beat Tennessee? Tennessee's a 9-3 football team. Oklahoma had a nice win against Colorado. They're 7-5. They had 40-some yards of total offense. A ridiculous Big 12 North. I can't drop Auburn. They're undefeated in the SEC. I had them number 2, and a lot of people are going to make an emotional decision based on this one game.
Do you think that the SEC is better than the Big 12 overall? The teams you have to play in the South.
Overall, I would say that, you know, it's negligible at best.
Okay.
I think it's a different game in the SEC on the road than any Big 12 game on the road. in my opinion. I just think that Auburn is the second best team, and that Auburn ought to have the chance to play to the national title against USC, Mark.
I just think it's unfortunate there are 3 undefeated teams from major conferences, and we don't have a playoff system to decide who's number 1. Bottom line, it's too bad that Tommy Tuberville's going to have to tell his team that they can't play for the national championship. The way that I see it right now is USC is number 1. They've always been there. But Oklahoma finally got their defense fixed. I've got Oklahoma number 2, but it's very close between Oklahoma and Auburn, and I've got Auburn number 3. I think it's very close between those 2 teams. You can flip a coin, but the way that you look at the way that Oklahoma's played the last 3 games, I think they finally got their defense fixed around this.
This is why the BCS was supposed to have been created. Not necessarily this year, because it's all the human polls, essentially 2/3 of the whole thing. But the BCS was created so that we wouldn't have these emotional outbursts at the end of the season. It took the whole season into context, right?
Right.
And I think that's exactly what's happening. It happens on other teams, too. People and voters who watch this game, watched a Tennessee team, remember, they hadn't played well against Vandy or Kentucky, and they're saying, well, this team was no good. And, you know, Auburn didn't exactly put them away. And then they look at Oklahoma just blowing out Colorado. You must understand, Tennessee would beat Colorado by 28 points. You don't think so?
Tennessee lost to Notre Dame at home. I don't know if I can say they beat them by 28 points.
And they gave up 64 points to Kentucky
They
and
beat
Vandy.
Kentucky and Vanderbilt by no more than 6. I'm not sure I'm willing to say they would blow out anybody really right now, to be honest. Well, you've been willing to say things. You go out on a limb. We like that about you. So to come here on Big 12 championship game, speaking of just going off, Oklahoma's offense did. Jason White for the 8th time in 12 games, throwing at least 3 touchdown passes. That one to Mark Clayton, the prettiest one of all. Sooners were up 21-0. They would roll 42-3, and that Sooner defense was just devastating. Hope Pelini, Brent Venables putting together a master plan. 46 yards they held Colorado to.
Justice potential. The BCS formula kind of hanging over it. I mean, there's not a conference title in any sport more cherished than the SEC football crown. And Auburn to go through a perfect 12-0 season, to win their first championship in 15 years, and yet the post-game celebration just didn't have the feel. There was a weird kind of subplot throughout the entire game, guys. It was hanging in the air of the dome. Every time Tennessee scored or did something, the Auburn fans were feeling, it's not enough, it's not enough. We got to win by a bigger margin. The pollsters are watching. And I tell you, it really takes away from the ability just to celebrate a championship. And that, you can argue, hypothetical injustice of the system. When you see the reaction of the kid's face and Tuberville's reaction after the game where he's lobbying everybody, including me, for my vote, it's not the way it should be. You know, a championship.
Absolutely. Well said. You know, the SEC probably from top to bottom is the best football conference in the nation. You got to give Auburn a lot of credit. They run the table and win the thing. But their performance on offense was average. The kicking game was average. The defense was below average. And as of right now, I'm telling you, USC playing Oklahoma are the 2 best football teams I have seen. I've changed my mind.
But before we change and talk about Oklahoma, I just want to congratulate Auburn. Great year. And I didn't think their offense was average. I thought their defense in the second half fell apart and became vulnerable. But this is a great year. Auburn, congratulations. Enjoy it. Enjoy the Sugar Bowl. It's a great year. 12-0. First time ever in school history. Don't be worried about the system. And I know it's easy to say for us, but enjoy 12-0 and go to the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, but it's tough to get patted on the head and say, don't worry about the system. You're not going to win a national championship.
That's a heck of an accomplishment.
One thing about USC, fans watching may wonder, well, the score against UCLA, which is not a great football team, was pretty close. The stats give USC a much bigger edge, but you guys had USC number 1. Any thought at all about dropping them to 2 or out of the equation because of a close call?
No, they were the best football team I've seen all year. I could keep USC number 1. And I tell you one thing also, UCLA, you know those games that are kind of like rivalry games? You never know. That's why they played so well.
Yeah, you were right about that this morning. It was a great game. UCLA played very well. Larry Kerr and his defense stepped up and got it done against Matt Leinart. SC is the number 1 team in the country. Oklahoma is closing the gap. You could consider them up to be the number 1 team in the country. Oklahoma's consistency, once they've got healthy on defense, you can look at the numbers and look at the way they play with a whole different attitude. The system worked as far as matching the 2 best teams in the country, USC and Oklahoma.
That's just your opinion
for the national title.
It's just your opinion.
It's a lot of people's opinion. Well, if you look at the majority of the AP and the coaches poll, that's the majority.
Well, that's my opinion, too. That's how my AP ballot. I'm not going to change that. Can you drop Oklahoma? And I wouldn't drop USC, but until it's played on the field, of course it's just a matter of opinion. Yeah. One team from the SEC is undefeated, denied a chance to play. That's just opinion.
My opinion. It just happens to be right.
All right, that's what everybody out there thinks. Back to the studio.
You know what they say, reasonable minds can differ, right?
How come I'm the only unreasonable mind? I have Auburn number 2.
No, you're entitled to that opinion. Nobody's saying you're not. We're going to see who agrees with Trev, who agrees with the others, who thinks that Oklahoma should be number 2. College Game Day Bowl Selection Special presented 50 yards in all 4 of those categories on the season, and he was over 300 on the day. The Oklahoma duo, Jason White and Adrian Peterson, both putting up solid numbers. White's numbers, not necessarily great from a yardage standpoint, very high completion percentage, threw 3 touchdown passes, and Adrian Peterson going over 100 yards for the 11th time in his career. How do you see it?
Well, I've been known to flip-flop a little bit. I think at one point I said Reggie Bush was clearly my guy, but clearly now, and I'm sticking with the last few weeks, I think it's Adrian Peterson. I think you look at these guys, I think the ironic thing is the top 2 teams have 2 guys, and who takes votes away from whom? I think Reggie Bush's performance today probably takes votes away from Matt Leinart. An unbelievable job by him. So I look at it, Adrian Peterson in the biggest of games. He got it done. Oklahoma, in my opinion, wouldn't be undefeated without Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson's number 1, Reggie Bush is number 2, and I have Jason White number 3.
Well, I've got the same 3 guys in a different order. I've got Reggie Bush number 1, not just because of today. I wanted to wait until the season was over. I wanted to take the entire body of work. I thought that Reggie Bush was so impressive the entire season, whether it be at the running back position, lining up as a wide receiver, returning punts, returning kicks. He was the most outstanding football player to me this season, and that's what the award is for. You look at Adrian Peterson, a fantastic year as a freshman. He was the biggest impact, I think, this season for Oklahoma in their offense. Jason White still had a tremendous season, but without Adrian Peterson, he wouldn't have the season he had this season.
How much do you place on the biggest games? How much do you place on the biggest games?
It's great for the biggest games. You put a lot of importance in it, but you will place the importance on the entire season.
And also, how much do you place on the factor that you have mentioned, the guys that make you hold your breath when they touch the ball?
Reggie
Bush and Adrian Peterson.
I got my ballot. It didn't say anything about holding breath on my ballot.
It says the most outstanding player. There's no criteria listed. If you think the wow factor's criteria, you can use those hoping that upsets on the field would solve the dilemma of the BCS and make a clear-cut championship game did not get their wish. We're going to have to rely on the system again, and joining us now from Atlanta, side of the SEC championship game, Chris Fowler, Lee Corso, and Kirk Herbstreit. Guys, Mark and Trev, a little difference of opinion as to who should play in the FedEx Orange Bowl for the national championship. Kirk, how do you guys see it?
Well, I've seen these teams. We've all watched them all year. I think it's pretty clear-cut. I think USC, despite their close call against UCLA, should be in the Rose Bowl or be in the Orange Bowl, and I think they should play Oklahoma. I think it's pretty obvious. Oklahoma, again, not only against an average Colorado team, but all year they've been getting better and better. Now that they're healthy in the secondary, they've become the dominating team that you expect to see from the beginning of the year. Oklahoma and USC are going to be in the Orange Bowl, and that's who it should be.
And I've been advocating Auburn all the time from what I've seen them, the way they played against Georgia. But what I saw tonight, Auburn played average defense, below average kicking, and if it wasn't for Jason White, they would have getting beat by a less than successful Tennessee team. So I go USC 1, Oklahoma 2, Auburn out of it.
So you switched them based on this performance?
Based on what I saw tonight, can't put them there.
Well, I'm not going to change my AP ballot, guys. I've had USC, Oklahoma, and Auburn. Certainly can't move down Oklahoma based on that smothering performance. I mean, how could you possibly move them down? No. USC, I kind of made up my mind on them, and I think the quality win over Virginia Tech that looks better and better, the win over Cal. So I agree. I think this table has USC and Oklahoma, but I feel for Auburn. I really do. It's a historical footnote to have 3 teams, and one's going to get screwed, and it happens to be Auburn.
Yeah, it is going to be Auburn, it appears, this time, and it is a shame because there's not a dime's worth of difference among these 3 teams, and not much difference, guys, between Texas and California, too. Now, if Texas of enough voters move Texas ahead of Cal's going to get left out of the Rose Bowl. Mayday, is that the way that should work?
No, I don't think so. I think that the way that they played this season, you have to take the entire season. Cal didn't have a good game tonight, but they played well the entire season, particularly against USC. But I can tell you one thing for sure, guys. Mac Brown right now is on the phone calling anybody and everybody across the nation who will listen to vote for him.
I think you're right, Mark. I think you look at the season in its entirety. I mean, you can look at this game and say they didn't play against Southern Miss very well, but look at, this Texas team. They didn't play well against Kansas either.
Right.
That was a game they easily.
It's the same type
of game, and that's why I said we look at these top 2 teams. It seems to to be a consensus. I'm not sure. You look at the season in its entirety, and that's why I think, guys, that Cal should be in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, Cal, you know, and that's the matchup the Rose Bowl wants. I know Leah said earlier that maybe they should just cancel the game. Coach, what do you think? Just get rid of the game if you can't have those sturdy Golden Bears in Pasadena?
Look, what I said is this. The Rose Bowl committee will sit there, and they will cancel the game and only have the parade if they don't let California go. They want Pac-10 versus Big Ten for 436 years, and they're not going to change it. Cancel the game, have only the parade. I'm telling you.
Guys, you have to understand, coming from a couple of Big Ten guys, what happened when Oklahoma played Washington State and Miami played Nebraska back-to-back years, the Rose Bowl rather cancel the game completely than have that kind of mess. So obviously they'd love to have Cal, but the system is going to decide if Texas moves up into the top 4. That would give them the automatic berth. I agree with Trev and Mark. I think Cal should be the team. I think they deserve their chance to go to the Rose Bowl based on the way they've played all year, but I think the system may get them. I think the system may get them. It's so close.
How's that ballot look for you there, Chris, Texas and Cal?
You know, it's a very tough one, Reese, because I'm not tied by this whole Pac-10 Big. I don't care about the conferences, and I don't care about Cal fans wanting to end that 46-year drought, and it's their birthright to get a Pac-10 versus Big Ten. I simply got to vote the ballot. I am going to keep Cal ahead of Texas because Trev made a good point. Texas had that close call against a Kansas team, not as good as Southern Miss, but it's not the kind of performance I wanted to see Cal close. I think the margin should have been bigger than 10. There was a terrible call by a Conference USA official that denied a late California touchdown. The margin should have been 17, but I don't think they're going to hold that position. I think that enough voters will jump Texas. It only takes 3 or 4, right?
Right, that's all.
3 or 4. I think Texas is going to jump to 4. It's just my opinion. It's not right. Now I'm voting it, but that's what's going to happen.
Sometimes not playing is the best thing to ever happen to you.
Sometimes that's right. You get in the clubhouse and wait on everybody else to supposedly mess up. And another point, too, this might have been the first time that a lot of voters had the opportunity to see Cal. And if this was the first time they saw them, then they didn't take advantage of the opportunity. You're right. It's not fair in that case. Speaking of difficult decisions and maybe not fair, how does your Heisman ballot look right now?
I can tell you guys, it's the most difficult thing ever. I mean, you look at all these guys, so many deserving guys. I think it was ironic today that the 2 quarterbacks who had played so well all season long may not have had their best games. I mean, Matt Leinart didn't have the best game. Reggie Bush clearly outshone him, and Jason White had a couple picks. I know the wide receivers fell down on him, but again, Adrian Peterson with a huge day. I simply have it like this. I've had it for the last few weeks. I'm going to keep it this way. I have Adrian Peterson number 1. I have Reggie Bush number 2, and I have Jason White number 3. Matt Leinart's number 4 for me, Mark.
I've got the same 3 guys, but a little different order. I've got Reggie Bush number 1 because every time he touches the ball, whether it be on offense or special teams, he's electrifying. No, it's been the entire season from week 1. As soon as he touches the ball, everybody in the stadium stands up. They want to see what the young man's doing. Adrian Peterson number 2, even though he's a freshman, had an outstanding season, and Jason White followed up his performance last year with another outstanding season for the Heisman.
What do you guys think, Chris?
Well, the guy who should win the Heisman is... Oh, forget about it. I'm not going to tell you that. These guys know. Man. I'm not going to give you the ballot. You can't host the show. You can't host the show.
5 undefeated teams.
You'll get nothing from me. You'll get nothing from me. Go ahead.
5 undefeated. Somebody just said there were 5 undefeated.
All right, that was a cheap shot, but I owe everybody dinner. I'll buy dinner. You know what? And you can smash my calculator. You guys are right. I was wrong. Back to the Heisman.
What do you have in the Heisman?
I got Matt Leinart. I've had him since 2 years ago. Matt Leinart, Jason White. But tonight, hey, this kid Campbell, I'm telling you, from Auburn, looked pretty good. I'll tell you what, but I still got Matt Leinart, the number 1 quarterback on the number 1 team in the nation.
I have Jason White at number 1. I have Matt Leinart at number 2, and I have Adrian Peterson at number 3. The way he ran today symbolized the entire year that he had. As I said earlier tonight, he ran with hatred. The way he ran with such strong passion and conviction. I have Peterson up at number 3.
It's going to be suspense, I think, Reese. You know, Leinart had momentum. He gave it back, but White's performance perhaps tempered by Peterson, you know, splitting some votes tonight. It's going to be interesting to see who the 5 in New York are.
Yeah, and you know, it would be interesting if you could find another candidate that could benefit from that, but I'm not sure that candidate's there, even as good as Alex Smith at Utah has been this year. Guys, it's been a lot of fun. We'll talk some bowls next time we see you on Sunday. How about that?
Okay.
All right, guys.
College Game Day Final is presented by Pontiac. Vote for this week's Pontiac game-changing.
Some nails are being bitten in Auburn, Alabama. Probably a little bit of a sense of relief in Norman, Oklahoma, and they think they're fine out in Southern California. The BCS projections, the final BCS standings of the year, will come out on Sunday. These are our projections. The final standings brought to you by Allstate. Our BCS guru, Brad Edwards, putting these together and believes it will be USC and Oklahoma meeting in the FedEx Orange Bowl for the national championship. Utah's safe in there, but notice the fourth-place team in the BCS standings, that would be Texas. Now, because of the BCS rules, here's the situation. If a team that is not a conference champion winds up ranked 3 or 4 in the BCS standings and there is an at-large berth available, then that team would get the bid. Now, you combine that with Utah from a non-BCS conference getting into the mix with an automatic bid, and that leaves either Texas or Cal out. This is how the projected matchups will look in the FedEx Orange Bowl based on Brad's standings. Oklahoma against USC. Now, after you get the national championship game set, then all of the natural ties come into place. That would send Michigan to the Rose Bowl presented by City and send Auburn to the Nokia Sugar Bowl. Then after that, that's when the drafting starts. Now, assuming that USC is #1 in the BCS standings and they remain there, that would mean the Rose Bowl would get first choice. Now, if Oklahoma winds up being #1 in the BCS standings, then the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl gets the first choice. For now, for our purposes, we'll say it's the Rose Bowl gets the first choice, and they will select Texas. Maybe not be too happy about it. They'll select Texas because they can't take Cal in this situation because Texas would get that automatic at-large bid by being ranked #4. That would then move us down to the Fiesta Bowl. They'll take undefeated Utah. In the Sugar Bowl with his first pick, they've got a pretty nice matchup. They'll get Virginia Tech, and then that would leave the Big East champion taking Pittsburgh, and those are our projected BCS Bowl bids. We'll show you exactly how it all shakes out. College Game Day Bowl Selection Special presented by Outback, 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 on the West Coast. Let's hand out some help.
Davis knocking down balls all day, holding Miami to 190 yards total offense.
How about, guys, how about Adrian Peterson? Another 172 yards, 10 of 11 games over 100 yards. We got to appreciate this freshman, fellas.
Got Josh Smith from Navy, had a pick 6 and 12 tackles in the win over Army.
How about J.J. Arrington, the running back from Cal, 261 yards
15
on the ground
seconds.
for the Bears.
Jason Campbell. How about Jason Campbell? 431 yards of total offense. Unbelievable. I respect you, young man.
Reggie Bush told you what he did. And how about the Texas fans who traveled to Hattiesburg to root for Southern Mississippi? See you next time. They would have trouble organizing a one-car parade at this point, trying to get it going in the right direction because the search has been embarrassing. There's no question about that. Heisman Trophy candidates, we seem to not necessarily great from a yardage standpoint, very high completion percentage, threw 3 touchdown passes, and Adrian Peterson going over 100 yards.
In the FedEx Orange Bowl, the 7th year of the BCS, and it's the first time that #1 and #2 in the opening poll were #1 and #2 on the championship game.
Under the watchful eye of head coach Bob Stoops, the Oklahoma Sooners defeated 3 ranked teams away from home and now will be making their 3rd trip to the BCS title game. Whether it's Heisman Trophy quarterback Jason White or freshman running back Adrian Peterson ripping through the line, the Sooners give opposing defenses fits. Bitterly disappointed a year ago in the BCS championship game, these Sooners want to finish what they started. Ranking near the top of the country in nearly every offensive and defensive category, the USC Trojans showed very little weakness. Quarterback Matt Leinart and a stable of wide receivers give the Trojans a lethal passing game. Electrifying Reggie Bush can break a game wide open every time he touches the ball. But you don't win 21 straight games with offense alone. The men of Troy also dominate defensively with a pair of explosive defensive linemen in Sean Cody and Mike Patterson. With one more win, this USC team will become the first team since Nebraska in '95 to win back-to-back national titles.
And joining us now, the head coach at USC, Pete Carroll, along with Chuck Long, the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. I'll start with you, Pete. What a difference a year makes. The polls loved you last year. The computers didn't. I want to know, this team that's undefeated this year, is this a better team than you had last year when you won a share of the title?
Yeah, I think we're a more complete team at this time. I think all phases of our game can be lethal on game day. Special teams can do it. Offense and defense can do it. We have a lot of elements that come together in this team. I think we're more complete.
Coach, speaking of last year, this is Aaron Taylor, Coach Pete. Speaking of last year, you were in a similar situation of Auburn this year, getting left out and kind of being the third wheel in the dance. Does your heart go out to an undefeated Auburn team that went 12-0 in the SEC?
Yeah, you know, it's a very difficult situation, obviously, and you can't say anything about the system. On this one, there's just 3 teams that are undefeated and all deserving, and it's unfortunate for, you know, for somebody to be left out of this ball game. And yeah, we do understand what that's like, but there's still stuff out there for them. So I know that they're going to play real hard in that ball game and try to keep their hopes alive.
Hey, Chuck, as offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, what a great dream job you have. But how the heck do you keep Jason White, Adrian Peterson, all those receivers happy all the time?
Well, they're a great group of guys. They've been together for a long time, with the exception of Adrian. He's brand new this year, but they've grown up together, and they're an unselfish bunch. Coach Stoops is big on that and has taught that from day one. And it's just great being around these guys the entire time they've been here. And now with Adrian coming in, we're hoping he stays a few more years.
2 very good players there, Coach. What have you seen SC on film? And if you do, what really stands out about what the Trojans are going to present to you?
Well, they're very aggressive. We're excited about the matchup. You know, two good coaching staffs, 2 good football teams going at it in the Orange Bowl. I think this would be great for America, great for television. They're obviously aggressive on defense. You know, Coach Carroll's background is defense, so they're going to get after it on defense against you. I've seen Matt Leinart. In fact, we were in on recruiting Matt Leinart a few years ago. We liked him coming out of high school, and it's really no surprise to us that he's done a great job as a quarterback there. But I think you have I think you have a coaching staff at USC that just on both sides of the ball know their schemes. They've been on every level, and you know, with Coach Chow on offense and Coach Carroll leading the way on defense, a big challenge for us.
Pete, started the season #1. Did that pressure, knowing you all had to win, you couldn't stumble along the way, did that pressure keep you focused and on edge?
Well, without question, you know, you have that hanging over you the whole time. It's been something that our football team has accepted and understood and tried to take it as it was the kind of following that we would consider normal, and we wanted to deal with it properly. And I think, you know, it was an exciting challenge for us, and it was a big win yesterday to get it behind us that we had done the whole season in the fashion that we wanted to. So it is an interesting way to go about a football season. It was different than it was a year ago, but it didn't seem to offset us with the focus and the attention that we needed during the year.
Pete, your football team has lost 1 game over the last 2 years, so all of the players that play for you must think getting to a national championship game is easy. How do you keep those guys focused and realize the work is not yet done?
Well, we're going to go about business like we always do. This is, you know, coming off of last year and the respect that we received, you know, and being named #1 going into the year was something that we were prepared for and talked about. And for the most part, it's kind of anticipating that the way it's going to be. Our players expected to be in this situation, and they've dealt with it really well. And we're not going to change our focus or anything that we do at this point. By no means do we feel like the season is over or the opportunities or the challenges are over yet. I mean, this is a fantastic matchup in the Orange Bowl with Oklahoma. It's, as Chuck was saying, it's a great matchup in all areas, all ways for us, and we'll prepare with great excitement and enthusiasm about this thing, but we won't change what we do. We'll stay on track.
Pete and Chuck, thank you very much. Congratulations again on being #1. #2, we'll see you in Miami for the FedEx Orange Bowl.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You know, it's interesting. I asked the question of Pete Carroll whether or not it would be tough to keep his players focused because it was too easy to get there. Chuck Long was telling us before, the 5th-year seniors at Oklahoma, this is their 3rd national championship game. They've got to feel it's easy.
And you know what? They have the pressure is gone now. These teams, they're in the game. They're in the matchup. We've got a great matchup for the national championship game. 2 very similar quarterbacks. Neither one of them like to run. They want to hand it off to their All-American running backs so that they can get out there and run. Great receivers across the board. This is a high-powered. I don't think either defense has the ability to dominate and shut down the other offense.
It's going to be a very good ball game with a lot of good matchups. Both defenses are so good, both offenses are so good, and both of these squads have done a great job, the coaching staffs, of getting their teams ready to play. Guys, it's a lot easier to get on top than to stay on top. USC and Oklahoma both getting their teams in position to win.
A little bit later in the show, we're going to break down both teams. We're going to look at the defenses. Here's the BCS standings presented by Allstate. USC #1 all season long. Oklahoma didn't move. Auburn, remember where they started in the human polls? That may have kept them #3. Tommy Tuberville, Coach of the Year in the SEC and a perfect team. We'll talk to him when we return. the top would have gone to 3 different bowl games. Back with more after this message and a word from our ABC station.
Let the bodies hit the...
We'll see plenty of hits like that in the FedEx Orange Bowl, USC against Oklahoma. Craig and Aaron over the telestrator to show us if there are any weaknesses in those teams.
Other than your bad arm.
Yeah, that was bad. That was terrible.
Both defenses very good. Let's talk about Oklahoma first. When you talk about Oklahoma and their pass defense against Texas A&M, you can see, Aaron, there's maybe a chance to get deep on them.
Yeah, Craig, what Texas A&M did is they spread them out. They went 4 wide outs, 1 back. The way Oklahoma decided to respond is 3 defensive backs against their 2 wide receivers. On the snap of the ball, that's when the problems start.
A little bit of a hitch there, and what they did, you can see where the defensive backs both broke down. You break down in this kind of coverage, you're beat deep.
You're beat deep, and that's what happens right here. Reggie McNeil goes over the top. Now, Oklahoma, what they did, the way they responded is that halfway through the year, they replaced that player, Eric Bassey, with Marcus Walker, a very good freshman. And they also get Antonio Perkins back, so that's going to help shore up that Oklahoma defense, but that's been one way they've been vulnerable.
All right, slobber knocker football time now. Let's talk about USC and their rush defense. USC's rush defense is really one of those deals when you talk about them, they don't just sit there all the time in the same position.
No, they don't. Something that Pete Carroll really likes to do is blitz and cause confusion against other teams' offenses. So what he's doing here is going to slant the defensive line and bring the linebacker up, trying to cause confusion for the people up front.
Running back, his job now to use his eyes, his feet will follow, see where the motion is. You see the flow of the defensive line get up the field. So against USC's rush defense, that's really against the Irish a couple of weeks ago. We saw that they had a little vulnerability there. So these 2 defenses in different ways may be susceptible to something against them.
Yeah, they're very good. Both these defenses are very good, but they do have weaknesses. Oklahoma's got a very good offensive line. Big, beefy guys. Vince Carter, Jamal Brown.
Big stuff.
It's going to be a good matchup.
Come out, run the option, big fella.
I got that, no problem. We, of course, also have all the BCS games, but not only that, because on New Year's Day, it's LSU, last year's national champion.